If you are struggling with infertility, you are going to love today's conversation. My guest is Dr. Brenna Squires. She is a psychologist who works specifically with couples who are struggling with infertility. She has been through it herself and has learned a lot about the medical side of it and her body and infertility in general, but she's also learned a lot along the way about how to have a healthy marriage through the process. When you spend years trying to get pregnant, it can take a real toll on your relationship. And so Brenna and I are going to discuss today how to not let that happen and the things that she has learned. I hope you enjoy. Hello, Brenna. Welcome to the Unhindered podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
I am very excited too. Since my audience doesn't know you, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, I am a licensed clinical psychologist, and I help couples who are experiencing fertility challenges to strengthen their marriage and their mental health.
Awesome. So I think you have a story about what got you into that specific niche, and I'd love for you to tell that story today. So why don't we start there and just kind of take us through the journey that you've been on?
Yes, so with regards to psychology, I've been in psychology for a long time. I've been a psychologist for over a decade now. But with regards to fertility, that's something that I never expected to happen. Much like everybody else, from everybody else that I know of, we thought that there was a plan to life. You know, you go to school, you graduate, you eventually get a job and get married, have kids, and it's easy. And I thought it was going to be so easy. So when my husband and I first got married, we decided we were going to wait. We were going to wait to have kids. And so I went on birth control, and we wanted to plan for our life together, create a budget, build up our nest egg, and do well at work. And that was our priority when we first got married, and really get to know one another as husband and wife.
And how old were you when you got married?
I was about 27.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was after I had graduated graduate school, and I was in my residency that I met him. And so we decided 2 years into our marriage to start trying for a family. And at that time I was 29 and still young, still in my 20s. So I thought, not a big deal. We're going to get pregnant like that. And I remember having so much excitement, thinking this is going to happen so fast. And it did not. One thing after another was going wrong. And kind of fast forward a couple of years, my husband and I found ourselves sitting at the dining room table, just feeling overwhelmed with life and overwhelmed with everything. And we found ourselves having that hard conversation about what are we going to do next in life and in our relationship, because infertility and other things had taken such a toll on our relationship. At that point in time, we had been trying to conceive for 2 years. My mother-in-law had moved in, and our work schedules were really off, and that was creating a lot of frustration. And we realized we needed to shift up our priorities because we weren't doing a good job with that. We were focusing on ourselves and what we were doing instead of our relationship. So we decided we needed to prioritize our relationship above anything else. And as we started prioritizing our relationship, we noticed that we were getting stronger. The problems weren't stopping or slowing down, but we were getting stronger as a couple, and we were actually enjoying spending time with one another again. And the more we connected with other people, the more we realized that's not common, that you kind of bring yourselves together. And we noticed that it was more common for people to create more tension and more distress in the relationship. And so that's one of the reasons why we decided to start helping people. So my husband and I help couples who are experiencing infertility to strengthen their marriage and their mental health. And part of the reason is because we experienced it firsthand.
Yeah. So what kind of trouble was that causing?
The infertility?
Yeah. In your relationship, how was that putting stress on your relationship? What was it doing to you guys?
Yeah. So with fertility, you have to, or when you're trying to conceive, especially when you've been trying to conceive for so long, you have a lot of things that you're told to do, like take your temperature at a certain time, time intercourse so that you can catch the egg, make sure you're eating right and doing things to be able to help fertility, maximize fertility. And it was causing a lot of tension because we weren't on the same team. We weren't on the same page with anything early on. My husband was working rotating shift work, which means he was sometimes working in the day, sometimes in the afternoon, and sometimes evening. And he was either working when we should be, quote, should be doing other things to be able to help our fertility, or he was just exhausted. And so that was the biggest issue that we had early on, was that we didn't have the same schedule, so we were constantly missing each other. And then because he was tired, he wasn't focused on fertility at all. He said, if this happens, it happens, but it's really hard to prioritize that when all of these other things are going on. And so our priorities were different, our schedules were different. We weren't communicating, we were just talking about the day to day and talking about the checklist of things that we should be doing, but we weren't actually talking about our feelings that much. We weren't talking about what it meant for us to be going through this journey together. We weren't going there. We weren't going to that deep level of hurt. We kind of glassed over the surface, and that's because we didn't really have the mental energy for it. And so those were a couple of red flags that we noticed in retrospect, but those were some of the things that we noticed that caused a lot of tension in the relationship as it pertains to fertility.
Yeah, so it sounds like getting pregnant became the focus of your time together, and
Yes.
everything else about investing in your relationship kind of went by the wayside because you had a limited amount of time together and you wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that you were working on conceiving, and then that was taking up all the time you had.
Yes. Yes. And all of the little things that go into it, um, that I didn't really understand, and I felt like nobody was explaining it very well. I was very stressed with the doctors because when I would ask questions, they wouldn't explain things. And then sometimes they didn't let my husband go into appointments, which added more stress because now I have to remember what you're talking to me about and you're not listening to me. And so it was a lot of pressure on me and a lot of frustration where I felt like I was doing it by myself early on.
I have had my own health journey and frustration with doctors and the medical system and troubles in my body that they can't seem to help me fix. I'm wondering where you're at in your infertility journey, physically speaking,
Yeah.
and what you've learned along the way, what your experience has been like with the medical system when it comes to that.
Yeah, so I have learned so much. And part of it was because I have had to dive deep on my own. And then part of it is because I found healthcare professionals that knew what they were talking about. I had to just kind of find different people. So in my health journey, I kind of noticed a progression where I first started off with traditional medicine, the OBGYN, nurse practitioner, and then I went to an endocrinologist. And when that didn't work, I went to more of a health conscious nurse practitioner. And then that didn't work. And so I ended up going to functional medicine for a couple of years. And I saw some progress, but it wasn't until I met with my current provider, which is a homeopathic fertility health professional. It wasn't until I met her that I really started to see a lot of progress. And so now I'm in I've been trying to conceive for 7 years, or trying to have a baby for 7 years, and I've gone to all these different health professionals. And as of right now, I am no longer taking prescriptive medications. I have a pretty consistent cycle most of the time. Sometimes if my immune system acts up, then it throws it off a little bit. But for the most part, pretty consistent cycles. And I also have painless periods. I have more energy, more motion regulation, and I don't have PMS anymore. And so all of those things are really exciting. I've also been able to see that my body is ovulating regularly. I can get the egg and the sperm to connect, but having it stick is the part that I'm struggling with right now. But I am so much closer than I was even like a year and a half ago, where now what I'm working on is just that longevity piece of being able to carry a baby to full term. And throughout this journey, and all of those things that I just shared with you of successes, all of those things were things that I was told from my previous health providers were not possible. I was told I would be on medication for the rest of my life. I was told that I needed hormone medication to regulate my hormones. I was told PMS is normal. I was told it's normal to have a cycle that's irregular at times, and it's 35, 36 days long, and that's not a big deal. It's normal if you don't ovulate. That happens. And so all of those things that I was told was normal is not normal. And the reason why I know now that it's not normal is because I persevered with finding doctors that were able to actually find the root cause and heal me from those things.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that you've gone that direction, because I've seen amazing things happen when people go that direction. And so I'm definitely hoping the same for you. So you said you've been able to find the root cause. So are you saying that it does lie in something to do with your body rather than your husband's?
It's both of us. So we did find root causes. So there's not, and that's something that's interesting too, because I was diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which essentially means they don't know why I can't get pregnant, but it also is super unhelpful, because what do you do with that?
Sure.
And so as I was been on this journey, I've been finding little pieces, little roots that are showing me that these are barriers, and those are the barriers that I removed and I have been able to heal from. And so we had some barriers with my husband. So when you asked about my husband, he had some issues with sperm quality, so motility, shape, and everything about that, even DNA. Same thing with me, my eggs. And I was told, I guess within the first 2 years, we were told nothing was wrong with him. They said, oh, it's fine. But when we looked at the same testing a few years later with the knowledge that we know now, it's not fine at all. Those numbers were terrible. The numbers that were considered fine to regular doctors, once we started looking into it, are not considered fine. And so that's when we started really working on egg quality and sperm quality, and doing different detoxes in our bodies to be able to improve those and tailor supplements for us to improve them. And now his quality and speed and shape, all of that has dramatically improved over the last 6 months, going from low percentile to high percentile.
Right.
And so all of these things only happened because we dug deeper and found deeper causes.
Awesome. So I do want to talk more about your relationship and how you help other people with that. But before we go to that, what are the things that what's the advice you would give to people on the physical side, on the medical side, that you learned that you think if somebody else is in your same situation, these are, maybe the top 3 things that they need to know or think about?
Yes. And so first and foremost, trust your body and what you think is going on, because most of the time we know that there's something going on. There's either a gut feeling or just this instinct that something's off, and you're the one that feels the pain. And so when doctors dismiss you to say that those are normal, that's not a big deal, it is a big deal because you're the one feeling it. And so don't dismiss that, because I found myself being gaslit a lot by doctors telling me, it's not that big of a deal, or you're not really experiencing what you think you're experiencing. And so just trust that first and foremost, that this is something that's going on, and what do you want to do about it? And then also be willing to advocate for yourself and your spouse. And then the third thing is, if you don't find help in your current provider, go somewhere else, because there is help out there. And in fact, there are thousands of doctors helping millions of couples all around the world get pregnant on things that many people have never heard about. And so if you are not doing well and you're not making progress, or you're not liking the person that you're with, go somewhere else, because you will find answers somewhere else.
So trust your intuition and speak up. Don't be
Yes.
afraid, like, oh, well, they're the doctor and I can't, speak against them because they're the authority. I have to do whatever they say and I have to keep doing, going back to them. You're paying them. So you get
Hmm.
to choose and you get to speak up.
Yes, something that my husband and I like to tell all of our couples is your doctor is your health advisor. They are not the decision maker. You are the decision maker. And so they are giving you information about your health, and it's up to you to say whether or not you want to take that information and go with it. And if you choose to do that, know that you can also unchoose to go that route at any point in time. You can say, I no longer want to do this treatment. I want to try something else. And if that doctor's not okay with it, you're also free to say, okay, I want to go somewhere else. And then just go to another health professional.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I like that. That you are the decision maker. That's the way it should be. I think,
Mm-hmm.
my experience, a lot of times doctors are not approaching the patient as if the patient is the decision maker. It's like, you
No.
have to do what I say.
Yeah.
I've been there myself and chose that natural route too and was completely healed by that. So I'm all for it. Um, do you mind me asking, were you on birth control? Because I know I've heard a lot of women say that
Yes.
that they feel that contributed to their infertility later in life.
Yes, I was on birth control for about a year and a half, and I did believe, and I still do believe that that contributed to what's going on in my body. And I brought this up to more than one health professional, and every single one of them told me it's not possible, that that is not something that will cause fertility issues. But I'm so thankful that I have a supportive husband. And even when we were having our moments of stress, he was always my support system to say, that doesn't even make any sense. How could something that's designed to alter your hormones not alter your hormones? And so he was always a big advocate to say, I believe you that this is something that's contributing to it, but let's keep looking till we figure out how we can overcome this.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So tell me about the work that you do with couples who are in the same situation and some of the biggest takeaways that people, if there's somebody listening to this that is in a situation where their marriage is stressed and hurting because they've been trying to conceive for so long, what kind of advice would you give them?
Yes, and so with couples, my husband and I offer coaching programs, and then we also created a course called Stronger Together. And I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, so I also offer therapy, individual and couples therapy. And with all of these services that we provide, the goal is to be able to come alongside you and meet you where you are at. And so with the coaching, we give you the tips and the tools needed to help you move forward, whether it's through communicating. Communicating with you and your spouse is so important to be able to get you on the same page. And that's a big one, getting couples on the same team, reminding them you are on the same team. So how can we get you to start working better as a team to be able to reach your ultimate goal of having a baby? And then with therapy, on the therapy side, that's when we go a little bit deeper for those couples that are, struggling with certain areas like anxiety, depression, shame, and guilt, and they really want to process those emotions at a deeper level. And so that's what that therapy portion is for, to be able to get to those issues that you are holding back from. And with everything that we do, we are on a mission to help 1 million couples who are experiencing fertility challenges to feel more empowered and hopeful by December 2034, because we really want to get the message out there. Like I said before, you are in charge of your fertility journey, and we want you to get that message loud and clear so you don't feel ashamed to say I don't want that medication, or feel embarrassed to say I don't understand what that means when you want me to do that treatment. So being able to speak up for themselves.
Yeah, so I'm a marriage counselor, and so I love this. I love that you're specifically helping couples in this very unique challenge that not everyone is able to relate to. And you are able
Yeah.
to relate to your couples and know exactly what they're going through and to be there for them the way they need. And, you know, it, as much as we as humans have this innate desire to bring life into the world, to have a baby of our own
Yeah.
biologically, it doesn't do a lot of good to do that if by the time you bring that baby into the world, the marriage that you're bringing it into
Yes.
is non-existent or not healthy, because then you're not doing what's
Yeah.
best for that child. And so
Yeah.
you've got to keep that intact and healthy along the
Yes.
way as you go through that journey. I think that's so important.
I completely agree because your marriage is the foundation for your family. I mean, if you even think about it in the family tree, you're the base. You are what holds it all together. And prioritizing the relationship and making sure that at every turn that you make, that you are listening to one another, you are advocating for one another, you are having fun with one another, and you are doing this together because at the end of the day, you you got married because you wanted to do life together, and that's what this journey is about, doing life together. And so you want to be able to do the highs and the lows together, and so working on all of those skills together will help you in parenthood because it doesn't end once you have the baby. It sometimes gets harder once you have the baby, and if you have multiple children, it will get harder. And so you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success at the beginning.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many couples I've seen who struggled with fertility at some point in their relationship, and they've now had a child or multiple children. And when I say, "Okay, where did the marriage trouble start?" Like, let's backtrack. It's
Yeah.
always, well, when we were trying for X number of years to have a baby.
Yeah.
I think that's that when they always kind of pinpoint to when the trouble started. And
Yeah.
many times what they tell me is that sex turned into a way to have a baby instead of a way to
Yeah.
connect and to be intimate with one another. And that changed their whole relationship when sex became
Yeah.
more of a forced thing that has to be done at a certain time and in a certain way. And it's kind of like a way to pressure yourself to have an outcome as a result. So do you find that also with the couples that you work with, that that's a big issue?
Yes, absolutely. And that's one thing that we work on because at the end of the day, it is important to be able to have timed intercourse because there's only one chance to catch the egg. And so we do need to keep the perspective that that is important, but we also need to remember that's not the only thing that's important. And so making sure that you are on the same page with what you are doing with regards to sex and intercourse. And one of the suggestions is that you also make sure that you are not only doing it during that time, do it during the luteal phase, doing it to the follicular phase, doing it throughout your entire cycle, and making sure that there are moments that have nothing to do with having a baby. There are moments that have nothing to do with that because it makes those quote forced times or times that you feel like it's a task. It makes those easier to do when you know that there are other moments that it's not about that. And so balancing it out, having those open conversations about expectations, open conversations about how you can even make those days more enjoyable. Having those open conversations, I think, is the most important thing to be able to take away that frustration.
Awesome. What else? Anything else that you see often with couples besides the communication gap and what I just talked about with sex? Is there anything else that's a common theme among the couples you work with?
Yes, boundaries, boundaries with friends, family, and work. Not having good boundaries with one or more of those things. And if you don't have that, that's when some more conflict can come up. In when we first started trying again, my husband was on different shifts and we were prioritizing work and we didn't really have good boundaries at work. I was working as a full-time psychologist, which is about was about 50 hours a week. So I would see a lot of patients, but then I also had work outside of that because of the nature of what I was doing. My husband was working multiple shifts and we were not putting good boundaries. So whenever the work said do something, we just did it. And we realized that was a major barrier to our connection because if we were just prioritizing work, we didn't have any energy for our relationship. And so one of the things that we did, or what we discussed about when we were sitting at the dining room table trying to figure out what to do next, was that we needed to cut back on our hours. And I was so happy when my husband said that he would quit his job and he would change his job. And he went in to work and said, this is my 2 weeks notice. I cannot do this anymore.
Wow.
And he said because he wanted to prioritize our relationship and our marriage, and this wasn't working for him anymore. And we were so thankful when his boss said he does not accept the resignation, but he will actually change his schedule to full-time day shift and reduce the amount of work. And that tremendously, one, it made us feel so supportive that his boss was coming alongside us to say, I support you in your marriage so much that I'm willing to change the schedule for you. And that my husband, I was so thankful to my husband that he was willing to do that as well. And that kind of changed. That was one of those turning points in our marriage to say, we're prioritizing our marriage and we're putting boundaries where boundaries need to be set.
Wow, that's amazing that not only your husband was willing to go to those lengths, but that his employer was willing to be supportive in that way. I know that won't be everybody's experience, but it's kind of like you don't know until you ask. You don't know until you try. And
Yeah.
what you got to prioritize what is most important to you, and kind of goes along with the way that we interact with doctors too. You don't ask and you don't know unless you ask or unless you try or you go see other people. You have to be proactive.
Yes, and what was so amazing about that was not just what happened to him, but I actually cut my hours back as well. So I cut it back to about 30 to 35 hours as well. And I didn't see any decrease in pay. I just decided to switch the type of clients I was working with, shift the type of things that I was doing, and I decided, well, let's see if this will help us work smarter and not harder. And we never saw any decrease in pay. We actually saw more enjoyment in our relationship because we were able to make those changes. And so both of us compromising was one of the best things that happened in our marriage.
And getting creative. You're like,
Yeah,
okay,
getting creative.
how else can we do this? There's got to be a better way.
Yeah, that creativity and that willingness, again, willingness to speak up and say, well, I want to prioritize my marriage. Let's see, let's just try it. And you really don't know unless you try. You
Yeah.
really don't know what they're going to say unless you ask.
Yeah. Well, I
And
really got to
thankfully,
hand it to you. Like you obviously do not have a victim mentality. You're like, okay, this isn't working. What can we do? We're not going to sit around and whine about it or say, oh, woe is me. We're going to see what we can do differently. We're going to keep trying. We're going to keep having hope. We're going to have a positive outlook about it. And
yeah,
you're going to help other people along the way. I mean, you
yes,
really, I think that that's very inspirational because no matter what happens, and I do hope that, you're able to have children because I know that's the desire of your heart, but no matter what happens,
yeah.
this journey of yours is being used to help other people and is being used for good. And that's just wonderful.
Absolutely. I'm just thankful that looking back, I have learned so much. And if I can help share even a little bit of what I have learned with somebody else and help them progress in their journey, I mean, that's just so exciting to me because I never had that. And so I thought, well, let me help be that person that I wish I had along this journey.
Yes. Oh, so how can people find out more about you? How can they work with you?
Yes, so you can go to my website, encourageandempowerwellness.com, and all of the information is there about the coaching and speaking and therapy. So if you're interested in any of that, you can also follow me on Instagram at Dr. Brenna Squires or connect with me on LinkedIn. All of those are available.
Awesome. I'll link all of that in the show notes. Is there anything else before we close that you'd like to say or share?
Yes, so I created something special for everybody that I come in contact with that I really want to be able to help you right now where you're at. So I created something called 8 powerful ways to be able to strengthen your marriage while you're trying to conceive, and it goes through 8 specific areas that you can work on, and it has strategies on what you can start implementing with right now. And so that you can find at encourageandempowerwellness.com/stronger together PDF. It's more than just a PDF, but that's just what I labeled it. But it's something that you can do and work on right now to be able to help you in your marriage.
Oh, awesome. I know there are so many people listening to this who are going to benefit from that. Thank you for what you do. And
Yes.
thank you for being on the show. It was great to have you. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I just again applaud you for what you're doing.
Yes, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it as well.